Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. I am Ahmad Farhan by Osman KAMIL, and today I would like to talk about forbidden sale by Makdum. So for the introduction, by al-Makdum refers to transactions that take place without the presence of items for sale, and is most commonly linked with futures, contracts and warrants in today's financial transactions. Every transaction must involve the existence of things for sale. According to the Hanafi and Shafi'i sects, it is regarded invalid otherwise. On the basis of the principle of istihsan, exceptions are made for salam, ijarah, musaqah and istisna, and the contracts based on tabarru'at, voluntary ownership, such as hibah, are exempt. So we continue that what matters is that the contract contains no element of certainly gharar, which is prohibited by Islam. Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim believe that the prohibition is due to the presence of an element of uncertainty rather than ma'dum at the moment of the transaction, which is correct. The restriction of the sale of specific items that lack the attributes is only mentioned in the hadith. Also included are things that exist but are not available at the time of the transaction, and the seller cannot give over the things for sale once the sale and purchase agreement is complete. It is regarded by al-Makdum. In this situation, the salam, istisna and ijarah transaction are classified as by al-Makdum, which is supported by the principle of istihsan.
Next, I will continue the presentation with the Shafi'i school of view. Viewing the goods suffices in the Shafi'i view to make the sale legal, even for goods which are assessed, like honey or perfume, which is by their scent or taste. They go even further and dispense with counting or weighing the goods once the buyer has seen them. Viewing of the goods does not have to occur at the time of sale if the buyer has seen the good previously. This holds providing the goods, properties such as houses or furniture, and not subject to other change. However, perishable goods such as fruits and vegetables, or goods subject to other sort of change, not necessarily deterioration, such as livestock, will have to be seen at the time of sale. In general, viewing a sample of the goods may be taken as a good representation of the quality of the whole portion offered for sale. However, in some cases, a true examination of the whole subject of the purchase is deemed necessary, as for example, the purchase of house, which requires examination of the interior as well as the exterior. Next, for the Hanafi school of view. For the Hanafi school, if the goods are present but hidden from view, then the seller must identify them by example pointing out which box contains them. If the goods for sale are in another place known to the buyer and are unique, then the sale is valid. An example of this kind of sale will be the selling of a certain book on a particular shelf. Next, the goods can also identify by description or by ownership or similar specification. The rule is that the buyer must be made fully aware of what he or she is buying. The Hanafi school permits by al-ma'dum for on two conditions. So in the first condition is the sell goods are owned by the seller, and in other word, he or she is entitled to sell them. Number two, the seller describes them in such a clear way as to avoid an intolerable degree of lack of information, which is gharar, which is in other word we can say the seller doesn't hide anything. So in all circumstances, the buyer is entitled to reject the goods if they do not match the description.
According to the Maliki school, Ba'i Ma'dum is the way to choose the goods to be purchased is sufficient by measuring the weight, volume or number. For example, buy durian by using a sample to represent the taste of durian. Next, the buyers also allowed to sell invisible goods to third parties on condition of paying promptly. They need to know the original sale is final and not subject to cancellation or variation. Then, generally distinguish between existential but hidden goods that cannot seen when they contract. This might be cancel the agreement of the sale if the hidden items open or removed. They will be damage to the goods. The Hanbali school was divided the goods in the Ba'i Ma'dum into two categories. The first one is an object that doesn't need packaging to know the conditions of items such as pen, books and others. The seller must give some information to the buyers about the goods during the contract or not. For covered items like oil in barrels and so on, buyer can return the goods if he knows that the goods are not the same as what the seller informed. The second category is like the item is described in Ba'i as-Salam. Buyers can reject the goods that they request to the seller if they are not satisfied with their request or ask for discount compensation for the problem. The Hanbali school also allowed the Ba'i Ma'dum if the goods measured by weight or volume. The sellers need to list the quality of the goods clearly, as quality can affect the price of the goods. Clarification of information relating to the goods and the exact measurement of the goods are prerequisites for determining the validity of the contract.
So for the last, we continue with the conclusion. We can conclude that all four Sunni sects are allowed by al-Ma'dum, although in general Syrian scholars have rejected this point. The goods are deemed to have been seen by both parties if the sample is the same as that desired by the buyer when the buyer inspects the goods, and a sale and purchase transaction for which the goods do not yet exist. The buyer feels deceived, but in today's development, as in the example above, the sale and purchase of as-Salam is allowed. Thank you for watching.